All right, there's no rush. We still got 1 minute before we're going to get going here. But as you come back, we do have a poll up. We'd love to kind of see what our virtual friends are feeling. How are you doing after this really great day of a lot of great speakers and great information? Jillian, I don't know what our in-person thing looks like. I was hoping everybody was going to be on camera so we could see our in-person friends too, but feel free to just kind of ask everybody how they're doing, and we can't wait to kind of get started here in another probably 45 seconds or so. We also strongly encourage you to feel free to be on camera if you're in a place that you could do that. Let us see your beautiful faces. Get ready to unmute with us. Get ready to chat with us. Get ready to use the poll function. We're going to do all kinds of fun things. We're going to play some activities. We're going to get you to come communicate with us. We can even use the last 30 seconds to talk about Tiff's amazing photo that she has here. I love when people turn off their cameras and we just see whatever quality photo they have. And Tiff, yours is in the top 3 of the ones I've seen in the past year. I don't know what you were doing there or what's in that coconut, but it looks like a really fun time. All right, we got 10:30. So we will make it a trainer 30 seconds, which is longer than normal time, to give everybody time to come on back, at least see a face or two, so we know that we're not just talking into the ethos. I see Thomas's face all the time. There we go. It's good to see everyone. I'm glad that you guys are here. I'm glad that we get to be a part of this. We're going to give it like another 15 seconds, just in case people are still coming back. It sounds like it's been a great morning. Hopefully everyone is warm. It is not warm, even way down here in the south. So hopefully the rest of you are staying pretty warm. All right, looks like we got 5 of 11. I'd love to see if we can get, what do we have? We have 12 people virtually. Well, 2 of them are us. So maybe if we could get 1 or 2 more votes, that would be amazing.
How am I feeling today? Sorry about that. I was a little late.
No, it's all good. There we go. Thank you. So we got a lot of pretty goods and 1 feeling amazing. So that's a good place to start. That means we can push you. We can really have some good conversations. We're going to go ahead and end this poll and jump into it because as we all know, 60 minutes goes by really fast. And we're trying to do like a whole bunch of stuff with you before our 60 minutes is up. So let's see if I can't close these polls. This is going to be a challenge today because not only am I doing PowerPoint and facilitating, but I'm also in charge of polls and all this other fun stuff. So this is going to be, we're all in this together, okay? And so we're going to see how far into this we can get. Thank you again for allowing us to be here. My name is Nate Lejeune from Up to Us Sports. I'll tell you a little bit more about myself and my other friend that you see here with you, but we appreciate you joining us today. A little bit about Up to Us Sports. Our mission is to engage, train, and support sports coaches to transform youth programs and communities. Our values, our goals are to develop the coach and everyone, foster positive relationships, focus on results, and being accountable to our supporters. And we've been lucky that over the last 10 years, we've been able to place almost 3,000 coaches and programs all across America, including training. This number is actually now over 23,000 coaches in sports-based youth development. We truly believe that a coach is one of the most influential and powerful adults that can be in a young person's life. Like I said, my name is Nate Lejeune. I'm coming to you live from the great city of New Orleans, where we are still recovering from the world's worst Mardi Gras that we've ever had in the history of Mardi Gras, with no parades. But I'm happy to be with you, and let me let my other buddy announce who he is and tell you where he's from.
Hey everyone, my name is Thomas Padro, and I am out of the Miami, Florida office for Up to Us Sports, and have been with the organization for the last 7 years, pretty much side by side with Nate here, and in the field for 8 years, also doing some work in youth sports for the Miami Marlins.
Thomas is one of the most amazing people that you'll get to meet. He is also a high school baseball coach and will be running off to a baseball game here in just a little bit. And yeah, and he's been here just as long as I have. And if that guy stayed in this field after being with me for this long, like he needs a gold star. So here's a couple of ground rules. Of course, we're probably all Zoom experts by now, but if not, we gave you a little bit of a photo down there to tell you exactly how to use all the functions because we're going to use all of them today. Normally we do breakout rooms and all kinds of stuff, but be ready to unmute. Come be on camera. Come talk to us. We're going to ask you to unmute and talk back to us. We're going to ask you to vote in polls. And it's going to have to be quick, because 60 minutes goes by really fast. We also understand life doesn't stop just because you're hanging out with us for an hour or hanging out at this entire event for the morning. We understand there's a lot of things pulling for our attention. We just ask that you be as present as you possibly can be. And if you got to turn your camera off to take care of something, we totally understand. Just come back and rejoin us as much as you can. And one of our big rules here at Up to Us Sports, none of this is forced fun. We do invite you, though, to come on this journey. This is so much funner when you participate with us and engage with us because, well, the more that you talk, the less, as Thomas says, you got to hear from me. And that is always a really good thing. And as we know, one mic at a time, but what I've already seen from this crew, that's not going to be a problem. But that we're going to encourage you. Come on, come hang out with us. Let's take just a moment to frame this session that we're going to be doing over the next hour because we are going to kind of build off of Dudney. I already did like a lot of our material. I was like, why are we here? We can just go exit stage left and say whatever he said. We're saying it part two. But we're going to build off of what he kind of presented with us. And we're going to go a little scientific. And we know that that's not always super engaging, but it's okay. We've kind of put in some polls and some other like unmute and share with us to make it as engaging as we can. Feel free to use the chat box. I thank everybody who was using the chat box a while ago and lots of great conversations. And thanks for letting me jump in the conversations with you. So come, ooh, it's okay, Jimmy.
Sorry, could you check the waiting room?
Oh, yes. Let me check the waiting room. Yes, it looks like we've got some of our friends in the waiting room. Now we're going to be in real trouble, friends. If I have to watch the waiting room too, then we're going to be real trouble. No, I'm just kidding. Let's see. I think that's it though. I think that's all of our friends. So where was I? Oh yeah. So please ask questions and talk with us as we go through this whole thing. Here's a couple of outcomes that we're looking to achieve with today. Number one is we're going to define the stress response and describe how the brain reacts to stress. We're going to identify the 3 most common stress responses. We're going to define triggers and the role that it has in the stress response. We're going to apply empathy and perspective taking when coaching to youth participants who may demonstrate some of these symptoms of experiencing trauma. And then we're going to apply the principles of behavior tells a story to your own coaching principles, because you don't come to us at ground zero. You guys are already great coaches. You already do a lot of amazing stuff. And we're just going to add to that toolkit and see if we can't take that toolkit to the next thing. Okay, we're going to play a little game, but you got to play with us, okay? So you're going to have to at least unmute. If not, this is going to be terrible. I'm telling you right now, this is going to be the worst game you've ever done in the world. For our friends who are live, you can try to join us as much as you can. This is going to be a little difficult because this is kind of something we got to hear you. So here's what we're going to do. The instructions are on the screen, but we're going to do something called count off. I think there is, let me just go ahead and make sure there's 13 of us. I'm going to ask my friend Thomas to play. We're going to see if we can get 12 of us to participate in this. I don't know. I haven't heard from 12 of us yet, so I'm taking a chance here. But what we're going to have to do is I'm going to say go, and I'm going to start a 30-second countdown on my little phone here. What you have to do, the job of our group, is that each of us must count from 1 to 12, but you can only say one number. And when someone repeats a number or 2 people say the number at the same time, we have to start all over. So 1 to 12, easy task, 30 seconds, but you can only say one number at a time. If someone repeats a number or says the number at the same time, we're going to start you all over. what questions might we have? Greatest instructions ever. Thank you. It's like they pay me to do this. This is amazing. Okay, here we go, friends. Get ready to unmute. We're going to get started in 3, 2, 1, go.
1,
2,
3.
3.
Oh.
1,
All right, let's start over.
2,
Here we go.
2.
3. Wait. 3, 2, 1, go.
1,
1. Oh my gosh.
1,
Go. Stop. Here, let's try it again. 3, 2, 1, go.
1.
2,
3,
4.
Ah, let's try it one more time. Go.
1,
2,
I believe that we can do it. We're going to give you one more shot at this here in 3, 2, 1, go.
1.
Oh, we couldn't even get past one on that one. That one went so fast. I'm going to give you another one. Here we go in 3, 2, 1, go.
1,
2,
3, 4, 5,
6,
7,
9.
10,
11,
12.
Yay, there we go. We did it. And we beat our 30 seconds. Good job, everyone. Let's talk about that game. Oh, I think we were going to talk about that game. Yeah, there it goes. What happened during this activity? Somebody, you got to be ready. Quick on the unmute because we've got to run through these questions. What happened during that activity? What were some of the emotions that you were feeling?
Anticipation.
Some anticipation. Can you talk about that, Tiff? Like what was causing some anticipation?
Yeah, I was a little anxious. I didn't know if I should speak up or if I should let someone else speak.
Totally. So like not knowing exactly when to go or where to go or how to go and just like that anxiety there. Somebody else. Thank you, Tiff. Uh-oh, there it is, Thomas. The quietness.
Dudley in the chat put a heightened sense of awareness.
Also, like just being aware of like, like I gotta listen. I gotta know what's going on here. What else? Excitement. So there was some excitement in that. I love that. When you were feeling, Tiff, especially for you and anyone else, I see somebody popped up in the waiting room. I got it this time, though. Here we go. When you were anxious and kind of thinking about some of the things that you were going through, do you think that you were like at your optimal best?
No, not in the first round or two.
No, right? Like we probably weren't our very best stuff. When we played this game in person, I heard some of it here, but here we can mute ourselves. But we heard some, yeah, right? We get some like, why? You knew that was my number. Like, why are you doing this, right? Like we start talking a little rougher to people. Tiff, let me ask you this. What were you thinking when you when you felt some of those emotions of like anxiety and like not knowing when to go or where to go?
One of the things I felt was trust that my team is going to step in.
Totally. What do you think you were thinking though?
Make it happen.
Make it happen, right? A lot of us, when we were feeling some of those like, oh, I can't believe, like, you know, we said go and two people said one. It was like, oh, really? Like we couldn't even get past one. The truth is we weren't thinking. We were just reacting. We were just responding in that moment. We can equate what happened in this game to what happens when stress gets the best of us, right? We have this unconscious reaction that happens in our lives. And this is critical. It's fundamental to what we're going to be talking about today, that there's this biological reaction that happens when we have a stress response. It is at the heart of the understanding of the symptoms and behavior that many of the young people that we work with are experiencing. So let's talk a little bit about parts of the brain. Whoa, this kind of went crazy on me. My apologies. Don't know why it did that. Let's go. The brain developed from back to front. And so in the very front of our brain, we have a very crucial piece. This is the part of the brain that makes you, you. You do all of your rational thinking. It's good to see some of our live friends too. I see you live friends. This is the part that makes you, you. It's called the prefrontal cortex. And this is the part of our brain that we do all of our rational thinking. It is large, it is in charge. We also can identify this as the watermelon just because of the way it looks and it's at the front of our brain. But this is what makes you different from your puppy and every other animal that you've met, right? This is what makes you unique. And the very next part of the brain that we want to talk about today is kind of in the middle, and it has a primal function. It's called the amygdala, which is a Greek word. Anybody know what that Greek word means? Somebody blow me away. Tell me what that Greek word amygdala means. No, I feel lonely right now. Thomas, I thought you were going to jump in. It means almond because it's like small and it's kind of in the middle of our brain. It has a primal function, and the function of that portion of our brain is to look for threats, to look for stressors, and to respond with our body. It's the part of our brain that starts to send blood to our extremities and get blood to the areas of our body to do and respond in one of those stress responses that we know that we all have, right? And these are the parts of the brain that we need to know about. I also want to give you some other ways that you can identify with these portions of the brain. That prefrontal cortex, also called the watermelon, can be described as a thermostat. Somebody tell me, unmute really quick, tell me, what does a thermostat do? That's absolutely right. It gauges the temperature around it, and it makes adjustments to your air conditioner or to your heater. You guys are so smart. Thank you for talking to me. I'm going to keep pushing you. You're going to talk to me before this is over with, right? It looks at what the atmosphere is, and it makes a decision to turn the air on, turn the heater on. Does it go up? Does it go down? How do we regulate ourselves? And that's what we can correlate to the prefrontal cortex, the watermelon, also the thermostat. And then that amygdala, what's a smoke detector do other than tell Nate that he's cooking food? I gotta laugh. I heard it. I don't know who it was, but I gotta laugh. By God. What does the smoke detector do, friends, other than tell you that you burnt the chicken?
It alerts
Sends an
you.
alarm.
It alerts you. Thank you, right? It just says, hey, I don't know what's going on, but there's something going on. Does it tell you if you're burning the food or if your whole house is burning down? No,
No.
right? It just tells you there's a threat, there's something going on that you need to be aware of. And that's what the amygdala does. It just looks for threats and stresses, and it tells you, hey, this may be dangerous to you. You might need to look at having some type of response to keep you safe. It just goes off. Let me go ahead and go to the next one. I think we've got a poll question. Oh, no, Nate's doing the poll questions. So let me see if I can throw this poll question up really, really fast. I don't think I can for some reason. Uh-oh. I think it's only showing me one poll. It's okay. You guys unmute and talk to me. I knew that this was going to happen. I even told Thomas, watch, these polls are not going to work. I want you to identify some little stressors in life that once you take care of them, they go away. Somebody tell me, what are some of those little things in life that when you take care of them, that your stress kind of goes away? Unmute and talk to me.
Putting away the laundry.
Yeah, putting away the laundry. Leah, I'm the same way. Matter of fact, I got a basket right over there that y'all can't see because I got the lights down real low. But like, drives me nuts. I just want to put away the laundry, get it out. All right, give me some other things.
Stopping to get gas.
Stopping to get gas, right? Especially when you're like low on gas, which evidently is my wife's special gift that she has. There's always low on gas, and Nate's got to go fill up the car. Give me something else.
Getting a phone call about your car's warranty and hanging up.
Yeah, those can be stressful, right? It could be like late for a meeting or late to meet a friend. It could be like having to pay a bill and you know that it's due today and you just got to get it over with and you pay that bill. And in these most extreme situations, what do you think happens to our body? Like when we feel stress, what happens to your body? What are some of the things that you feel and some of the things that happen to you?
Get anxious.
You get anxious. What else happens? When we feel that anxious, what happens to us?
Sometimes you
Get
tighten
mad
up,
quick.
you're not breathing.
Totally. We tighten up and we don't breathe the way we probably should breathe. What else?
Heart rate goes up.
Heart rate goes up. Love it. What else?
I just talk too much.
We talk. Maybe we'll over talk. I'm really good at over talking everything, as you probably already see that I'm a couple of minutes deep into this, right? Sometimes we sweat, our heart rate goes up, all of these things. And then we get this stress response. These are really a couple of different ones. We're going to talk about three primary ones. Somebody tell me what you think these stress responses are. What are some of the stress responses that happen when we feel stress?
Fight.
I thought I heard it, but it was real low.
Fight.
Fight, yes. What else?
Flight.
Flight, I love it. What else?
Freeze.
It's like y'all seen my slides. I don't know how you do this. Like television, just looking at all of my slides before they even come up. These are the things that our body tells us to do, right? It starts sending blood out of our prefrontal cortex, which is super important. It takes blood away from the area that we do our rational thinking, our rational choices, and it sends it to our extremities because we need to do one of these three things. We need to fight our way out, which is not me. Thomas is a fighter. It's going to fight. I got to run. I got to get up out of here, or I freeze, the animal equivalent of playing dead. These are the three common ones. There is another one, but for sake of time today, we're not really going to talk about it. But in a normal situation, we dip into one of these stress responses. We handle the situation at hand, and then we come back out of it. Blood goes back to our prefrontal cortex, and we're able to kind of function normally. But in some of these most extreme situations, that doesn't necessarily happen. And to kind of talk about some of those extreme situations, my friend Thomas is going to come up and tell us about some of them.
Thanks, Nate. So here's where I want to check, because we didn't catch all of Dudney's presentation before, but Dudney or anyone who was here during that, did we get a chance to talk about adverse childhood experiences and where they came from?
No, we didn't dive into that particularly. It's an important part of all of this.
Awesome. Then we're going to jump into that a little bit right here. So you may have heard some of the same stuff from Dudney's presentation or any other presentations that you may have heard. But what Nate said, we can usually dip into these responses, fight, flight, and freeze, and then get out of it when we are at a place where we feel safe. But the question that we want to ask, and where we come in as mentors to youth, as positive adults in youth lives, what happens when one of our young people actually can't dip out of that response, right? They jump into it and then they can't turn off whatever that response is. So I want to ask you that question. What could happen to that person's brain if we experience these big scary situations, either significantly or chronically? What do you think can happen?
Brain development.
And a little bit louder?
Brain development.
Yeah, what about it? What about brain development? Talk that one out.
The connections aren't made as well because of the toxic stress that they go through.
Yeah, so we just may not be able to continue learning the things we want to learn because of these experiences, right? Because we're sort of stuck in this mode. Definitely. So there's a ton of questions or a ton of answers that would work right here, but we do know that when these scary situations come up, the longer the experience or the worse the experience, the more significant the impact, the more significantly we can't continue to learn the things we want to learn, and we sort of take these hits. So we want to make sure we're on the same page with the word or the phrase toxic stress, and that really ties in our ACEs study. So if you don't know, the Adverse Childhood Experience study came from the early 1990s. Insurance company in Southern California did a study, and they wanted to find out what happens when we experience these adverse childhood experiences and how does that play out in life. And there were two different buckets that they looked into. This idea of personal ACEs, which is physical abuse, verbal abuse, physical neglect, emotional neglect, all things that happen to that person directly. And then the idea of family or community ACEs. So things that don't necessarily happen directly to you, but are happening to people caring for you, people who are very important in your life. So mental illness, a family member who's in jail, domestic violence happening in the house. We looked at all sorts of these things to try and really figure out what happens in life. And before we go a little bit further, this was done, like I said, in the 1990s, right? So as the years progressed, the ACEs study has continued to evolve itself. And today, that list includes things like racism, sexism, homophobia, along with homelessness and food insecurity, and all the different branching areas that come out from that. So this ACE study, although done in the 90s, and we know that things are different now just as time passes, the ACEs study has evolved to count for all these things. So what they noticed when doing this research and doing this study is that in any situation, when one of these adverse childhood experiences are present, the amygdala actually takes over the brain, right? That part of the brain that we want to be in that Nate was talking about, the prefrontal cortex, actually shuts down. And it shuts down because the amygdala, the fight, flight, or freeze response, is just grabbing a hold of every bit of control of the brain. And we're only responding in those moments. And this is very important for us to talk about because, like we said, significantly or chronically, and especially with young people who don't have the skills to really get out of these responses in a healthy way, it's important that we know what these things look like and what's going on for our kids. So we want to throw up a brain scan, which I think you might have saw a quick flash of right here on the next slide, just to make sure that we're all on the same page, that this isn't sort of fuzzy brain science, that the study or the research is very base level, but this is actual science, actual thing that's going on inside people's brains. So on the left side, you see what is a healthy brain. I think actually if we click over, do the titles come up there? Perfect. So we got the healthy brain on the left side. You see the top part of that brain is the front part of the brain. So the frontal lobe, the prefrontal cortex, the part that we want to be in that makes us us, right? But then on the right side, you have a brain that has some results from toxic stress. So we notice that definitely a lot less red and orange happening in the front part of our brain where we want to be. And then there's a little bit of a stronger concentration more towards the back, which is where that amygdala sits, right? So when we experience toxic stress, we have less control over our rational thought and good decision making. And what tends to happen is our amygdala takes over. So this is very important for us. And we want to put a poll up here right now, Nate. Can you, that's not going to come up. Does the question come up right here? I think it does. Perfect. So let's think about this a little bit. What are some clues? If we know that this is what's happening in our kids' brains, or in our brains even, when that smoke detector takes over, what are some clues that will tell us a kid is responding out of their amygdala, that a kid is responding out of that smoke detector, fight, flight, and freeze? What are some things that we can see in here?
Low social skills.
Yeah, low social skills. They sort of shut down socially. Definitely. Let's get a few more. 2 or 3 more. What else will we notice?
Aggression, like
Yeah, definitely, right? Going back to that fight part, aggression. Just aggression, whether it's actual physical aggression or speaking aggressively to somebody, definitely. Nate, we can throw these up there and then start to get a little bit more if people think of them.
depression.
Yeah, depression. Yeah, we might see some depression. Some again, more of, I guess, the shutting down, but now not really the socially, and a little bit more of what's going on mentally and emotionally. Ooh. I gotta freeze on the screen, but if that's up, give me a thumbs up if we're just on pace.
It's up.
Perfect. All right, so we get all of these, right? These shutting down, violent outbursts, dysregulation, all of these things that we call behaviors, right? Things that we can see and we can hear, and in the clinical world are called symptoms. So it's important that we focus on these things that we can see or hear. And what tends to come with these behaviors are triggers. So this is a word that I'm sure we've heard a lot of, but a trigger is going to be that thing that's like a light switch. And I think we actually have that image up there. It's something that you flip that light switch, this trigger is present, and then automatically we're seeing these behaviors, these aggressive responses, or this shutting down, this depression. And the trigger is going to set off the amygdala. And it's so important for us because we know that kids need time to work on the skills of being able to deal with these responses. And if we're able to see these triggers coming from a mile away, we're able to set kids up in a better situation. We're able to at times even avoid these triggers altogether, so that we can help these kids stay in a healthier place in their brain, that we can learn the things that we want to learn in our program. And this is so important for us. One of the most important things that we talk about in all of our training that we do, is that in this moment, when a child is suffering from trauma and they're having this amygdala response, it's the absolute best that they can do in that moment, the absolute best that they can give us at that time. And sometimes I know we think a kid usually will show up to our program and it's like, they just wanted to ruin our day today, right? They just wanted to come here and disrupt things today. But what they're doing is actually the best thing that they can do. And sometimes, yes, it is at that level. I think there's another question on one of these slides. So the question that we're going to put up right here is, what is happening for a kid when they're in this kind of state? What are they rationally thinking? And this is a callback to a question that Nate has already asked today. But when a kid is fighting, running away, freezing, having this amygdala response, what are they rationally thinking? Somebody unmute and share. And then I think some of those folks that are a part of the live crew may have had like a handout with some responses that you can fill out right there as well. But share with me, what are we thinking? Think about yourself in that moment too, because this is really important to hold on to. If you've ever had this like outburst, this like speaking aggressively to somebody, or getting in a fight, or having to shut down and run away from something, what were you thinking in that moment?
I think a lot of them feel intimate doom.
Say that a little bit louder. I heard a response, but I couldn't really fully hear.
Intimate doom.
I got you. They were feeling like this doom, like there's just like a lot. There's this thing that's going to happen to them.
Yeah, this doom, right, from what's about to come, or just in that moment feeling that way. And it's really important. Somebody said, I think right before we got that response, I don't know, which is really close to the response that I think we need to focus on right here. Is that in that moment, if we've ever had an argument and we said something in the heat of the moment that once it left our mouth, we were like, oh no, why did I say that? And you ask somebody, why did you do that? What were you thinking in that moment? And they can't answer. It's because we're not thinking when this happens. There is a thinking part of the brain, rational thought and good decision making. There is a reactionary, survival-based part of the brain, which is the amygdala. And when kids are responding, when they're fighting, running away, freezing because they have this amygdala response, they're not thinking. They're just trying to do whatever it takes to survive. And it's all based upon our past experience. So however they survived somebody yelling at them in that moment, if it's fighting, then that's how they're going to respond again, because their brain has taken that in and they know now that the survival response is going to help me get out of this situation. Such a vital moment in our training. Kids are doing the best that they can. And the brain has just been rewired. That amygdala hijacks the brain, literally takes control away from the prefrontal cortex. And that's it. But just by showing up, kids are making this incredible effort because we know that they're trying, they're doing the absolute best that they can, just don't have the skills in this moment to deal with these responses. So very, very important for us. And on this next slide right here, we're going to call back to this in a little bit. But again, if we're not thinking, if we're working out of our amygdala, then a player isn't going to be able to rationally tell us what is going on. But based on their responses, based on everything we know about the brain and about trauma, if a player could tell us what is going on, they would say something like what we have right here, right? Talking about survival, talking about an abnormal situation, but a very normal reaction. That kids are always on guard, but that they're doing the best that they can do. That first one is always so important to me. I think it's like the top one that I love to take out. It's this normal reaction to an abnormal situation. Why would you try and do something different? The brain is actually doing this for us in the amygdala. Why try and do something different if we've already survived this type of situation elsewhere? So it's just a response based on what we've experienced in life so far. So all the things that kids would be able to tell us, again, we're going to call back to this in just a little bit, but now that we sort of know what's going on in the brain, we know that outward response and the behaviors that we should be looking and listening for. Nate's going to talk to us a little bit or do an activity with us to set us up for how we can work well with kids experiencing these things.
This is what I need. I need you to grab a scrap piece of paper, a pen, a pencil, a marker, cut your finger. I don't care. Just something that you can write with. Don't cut your finger because there's a lot of crazy things going on in our world. But grab a pen, a piece of paper. And while you're doing that, I want to make another connection to what Thomas was saying. Somebody put on your acting skills, unmute, and tell me what is the noise that a smoke detector makes. Come on, I see you want to. I see Leah really wants to
A
do
lot
this.
like. "Brrrr."
Yes. Right? It's just like going off. Imagine that is what you hear when you're sitting in your program, because kids who are actively suffering from trauma, that is all that their brain hears. They even have scientific proof that the resting, and this is important, the resting heart rate of kids actively suffering from trauma is the same as running a marathon, as their resting heart rate. Their bodies are literally always on guard and they are tired. This is why kids fall asleep in class. They fall asleep in your program, is their bodies are physically tired because they're constantly on guard. These are the kids that sit in a chair that they can always see the door or find themselves in a place where they always know what's going on. Okay, here's what we want to do now that you all have your pens. I want to get your autograph. So what I want you to do is I want you to sign your name on that piece of paper, just like you were signing an autograph. Just sign it regularly. I want to see this beautiful handwriting. I'm not going to lie, coaches have the worst handwriting. It's right below doctors. All right, now I want you to put the pen in the other hand, and I want you to sign with your other hand, your non-dominant hand. Same thing, sign it as if you are signing an autograph. And then when you're done, if you are brave enough for our in-person friends, share it to your friends around you. If you're on camera, show it to the camera. If you're brave enough, let's see those beautiful signatures. Uh-oh, we already got giggling going on and laughing going on. There's a weird lag thing that just happened for my in-person friends. Y'all just like time warped on me. It was weird. It was totally crazy. Let's see those signatures for our virtual friends. There we go. All right, somebody talk to me then. Somebody tell me a key word of how it felt, like just one quick word of how it felt to sign with your dominant hand.
Easy.
Easy. Give me another one.
Fast.
Instinctual.
Fast. Instinctual. There's a word that we don't use in Louisiana. No, I'm just kidding.
Normal.
Normal. Love it. All right. Now let's talk about your non-dominant hand. Give me a word how it felt to sign with your non-dominant hand.
Abnormal.
Abnormal. I see what you did there, coach.
Slow. Very slow.
Slow. I sign with my
Awkward.
awkward. I sign with my non-dominant hand. I'd be better off signing with my left toe. Like, that's how bad it is. It is not a good practice for me, right? It feels weird. It feels slow. We don't have this poll. So we're just going to ask you to unmute and talk with us. If you had to come in every day and start your day off with signing with your non-dominant hand for 1 to 2 hours a day, do you think you would get better at this skill?
Yes.
Yes. Any other thoughts? Because that might sum it up right there. We would, right? So I was playing basketball about 10 years ago because I can't let it go, even though my age says I need to let it go. And I tripped and I fell. And when I went to catch myself, I broke my elbow. And so I'm going to be really transparent with you. You can see my arms here. That's actually as far out as that arm goes. I'm stretching it all the way out because I broke my arm in the elbow and they can't fix it. And so because of that, for a long time, I'm telling you guys, you would have laughed at me. I had like a full breakdown. My doctor told me I wouldn't play sports anymore. I'm just like, I'm in my 30s. I'm having full breakdown mode. But I learned, because I was in a sling for like 8 months, I learned how to throw with my non-dominant hand. And it became this thing I actually got really good at, throwing a baseball or a football with my non-dominant hand, because I still wanted to play sports. You can get better at these things if you worked at it. What would it take for us to get better? Give me some words of what you think it would take to not only get better at writing with our non-dominant hand, but also like rewiring our brain. What would it take? What are some words that we could use of what it would take to rewire our brain?
Commitment.
Commitment. Love it. We're thinking.
Patience.
Patience. Love it. Yes. Give me some more. Give me one more. And then I'll shut up.
Positive attitude.
Love it. Like just having a positive attitude, like I can do this. I've got this in me. It's so important, right? Here's some more practice, time, repetition, that support, that like positivity, right? Skill building, and just like being physically active. And this is the one we're really going to talk about here for a little bit. Being physically active is so important. This is why sports is such an important place that kids can learn skills, and to talk about the importance of being active and how it actually helps rewire our brain. Thomas is going to come back up.
Awesome. So we know, and we've heard a lot for the past few decades, I think now, that physical activity can help us be better learners. We're not going to dive into that part, but we also know that physical activity helps us build different pathways and strengthens our hippocampus, the part of our brain where we retain information, right? Which is very, very helpful in learning, especially with young students. So what we now want to talk about is the part of our brain that's going to help us with that stress and that toxic stress that we talked about before. And that part is the amygdala. Physical activity actually helps build pathways so that we sort of go around our amygdala in times where our amygdala would be hijacking our brain. So let's talk about that based on a study with rats. All right, and so we have some rat friends right here. And rats actually are used a lot in studies when we look at the brain in different parts of the body, because they are very similar, of course, not identical to the human makeup, but very similar in their responses. And what we know about rats is that rats love exercise. They actually run up to 2.5 miles overnight in labs where they're kept. And so in this study, they looked at 2 different large groups of rats. The first group of rats they put in this big enclosed area where they had a whole bunch of space to move around in, that they had a whole bunch of these wheels that you see in the bottom right of this screen, and the wheels were unlocked, so they were able to get on there and basically get all their running in. And then they put the other half of the rats in a little bit of a smaller enclosure, and there were wheels in there, but all the wheels in that cage were locked, right? So they couldn't get all that running that we know rats love to do. And they kept them in there and kept everything else the same. The room temperature, how much they ate, what they ate, how much water they had access to, everything was the same except for how much physical activity they can get. And then they decided to test how this affects the rats when stress is introduced. So what they did was they took this first group of rats, and I think if you click one more time, this is going to tell me the group of rats that did not have the physical activity. So they took that group of rats and they put them into a little tank enclosed area with very cold water, right? And underneath the surface of this water, it wasn't too deep, but underneath, eventually, they can find this little path, this little ramp that would take them up out of the cold water and into some dry space. And so they dropped the rats into this giant tank or container. And what do you think happened? What do you think happened to this group of rats? Any responses are good here? They didn't drown, but they almost drowned, right? So they struggled a little bit. What we saw from the rats that got dropped into the tank is that they struggled to find that ramp. They just moved around frantically and had a very hard time. So they didn't let any of the rats drown right there. They eventually, if they saw one struggling, they took it out. Some of them, a very few amount, found it, but what they saw is that the rats very much panicked, that they were hijacked in this moment. I think that's the next piece of this slide that's coming up, right? Their amygdala hijacked their brain. They were not able to rationally think, how do I get out of this situation? It was just full on fight, flight, and freeze, right? And then they took the second group of rats, and this is the group of rats that had their wheels unlocked and were able to get 2.5+ miles of physical activity every single night and every single day. And they added them to the cold water tank. And now in this situation, they saw something very different. So when they put them in the tank, these rats had a much less difficult time finding that ramp. They looked a little bit more under control. A larger number of the rats found their way out. They did have to save a few of them. But what they saw after they concluded this study, sadly, they had to look at these little rats' brains, is that these rats who had a ton of physical fitness, their brains released chemicals when they were introduced to that stress, that very cold water. And it released chemicals that stopped the amygdala from hijacking the brain. They were able to stay in their prefrontal cortex a little bit longer, which allowed them to find that ramp and get up to dry and warm space. The only difference was that they had more physical activity and more opportunity for physical activity than the other group of rats, which is amazing for us, right? Because we are folks who do a ton of physical activity when it comes to sports. And what we know now is that just by introducing physical activity, making it something that's available for our kids, we allow them to work through their stresses better because they've built new pathways around the amygdala, but also that part about the hippocampus and that they were able to also help kids learn and retain more information. So in communities, with the kids that we work in, we know sometimes they come from communities where control is like really ripped away, or this idea of physical fitness isn't as relevant. When they come to our programs and they're able to actually get this stuff, we're helping them in so many ways that we think a lot of folks don't see, but that we're starting to see right now. And a really important part of why this is why this happens and why physical fitness is so good, this is always a great thing to tie in, is that when we go back to the conversation we had about being stressed, when we're stressed, we sweat, our heart rate goes up, we might get a little bit jittery, right? Our stomach might start to hurt. It's the same thing that happens when we're working out, when we're physically active. So the only difference between being stressed and feeling these things and working out and feeling these things is that we can stop, right? We have the control to stop, so we can allow ourselves to push further than what is comfortable. And by doing that, we strengthen the hippocampus and we strengthen the amygdala. Awesome. So give yourselves a self high five because you're doing incredible work, like Nate said earlier, right? We're not coming in here and changing the game on you. You're already doing amazing things. And to wrap this up for us, Nate is going to talk to us a little bit more about behavior.
Yeah, thanks, Thomas. So again, trauma is defined as the ripping away of control, and being physically active helps us take back control. This is the mind shift that we help coaches go on, like the perspective shift. And sometimes that can be a tough journey, but to understand the kids are doing the very best they can. Biologically, the way our bodies are wired, they actually are not in control when they are suffering from trauma. And as a coach, you have the opportunity to help bring that kid back in control of their actions and their decisions. This next part we got to go through really fast, but it's so important. And this is why I wish we were in person, because we could have so many great discussions, because sometimes this can be a tough journey for some coaches to go on. But I believe in this group, and I believe that's why you're here today, because you're part of that paradigm shift that's happening in the coaching world about how we look at kids' behavior. But kids often don't show up to our program and hand us a case file with everything that's going on in their lives. Some programs do, but most programs do not. You just have to know and be a good listener, be a good looker about what's going on around you to pick up on the different things that are going on, because we understand that even though they don't hand us a case file, it's our job to really look at their actions and pick up on little things that are going on. It's also not our job. We're not full-time counselors. We don't have these like specialized things that kids sometimes need. So it's not our job to push them to talk before they're ready. It is my job to build a safe space, build really close relationships, and be a really great watcher of behavior. Because if I can really pick up on behavior will always tell a story, which is, I think, our next one here. It's a good job for a coach to really look for behavior and become a master behavior watcher, because that behavior will tell us the story that we can pick up on very soon. I went to a trauma conference several years ago, and I was listening to a lady give a speech about how she used physical therapy to help people reconnect with their bodies and heal themselves from trauma. It was just like really fascinating stuff. And she made a statement that changed the way kind of I looked at behavior forever. And she said, often we meet people that we know or have suffered through a traumatic event, and we push them to tell us their story. And when we do that, we actually make them relive that traumatic experience, re-traumatizing them and re-triggering them. It's just our job to know that there is a story. And when you know that there is a story, you don't need the details of that story, but you can be more patient and understanding and create a healing-centered approach in your program to help kids heal from that trauma. When kids show up to our program, often the story that they say about themselves is like, this is who I am and I can't change. I've been labeled by other kids, other adults in my life as the kid who fights, as the kid who cusses, as the kid who's bad. And I've got these labels and I cannot change. And it's my job to help them change that story. There are no bad kids, full stop. There's just behavior that we can learn skills to change. And it's my job to help kids rewrite that story about themselves. And using our sport and physical activity can be a great way to do that. We understand that the same player can show up to my program and actually be operating in two different areas depending on the day. Good stress. I can harness that for competition, to learn skills. These are the good things that happen in our lives. Stress itself is not good or bad. There's an amazing book out there called The Good Side of Stress. Go read it. It's an amazing book that will change the way that you view stress. Stress by itself is not good or bad. And I got to hurry up. I see people yawning. I'm putting people to sleep already. I promise we're going to land this plane here in just like a couple of minutes. But stress is not good or bad by itself. It just is. And how we respond to stress because of our past life experiences determine if it's good stress that I can harness to learn new skills or for competition, or is it bad stress that overfloods my system and causes me to maybe have unhealthy behavior or make unhealthy decisions. And depending on where my kid shows up will tell me what brain that they're operating in. Are they in their watermelon? Are they in their thermostat? Or in their prefrontal cortex? We can harness this good stress to learn new skills. Are they in their almond? You've seen us today ask for you to do a check-in poll. The reason we do that is so that we know where people are. Because if you were to all put 2s and 3s, then maybe we can't push you, and maybe we got to come up with a different approach because you're not in an area, a space in your mind to learn brand new skills. And knowing that about your team, knowing that about your players is so important so that you can understand exactly how you can push them and where you can push them. In the end, unmute and talk to me. Why is it so important that as coaches, we talk about and understand the role of behavior? Somebody come talk to me. It's lonely again, Thomas. I feel the loneliness. Why is it so important that we talk about behavior? As a coach, why do you think this is an important thing to know about and to be able to talk about?
Because it determines their destiny. Behavior determines outcome.
Right. Like it determines maybe some of the decisions they make. And ultimately, our lives are just a culmination of all the decisions that we've made in our lives. But oftentimes for kids, it's because the words may not be there. Like they don't even know this about themselves. They may not have the knowledge that, hey, I'm triggered right now, or I'm not in a good place in my brain. They're just kids and they may not have learned that information. And so maybe the words aren't there. They don't know why they're doing the things they do. This is why the kid who completely blows up and cusses you out and storms out of practice comes back later and goes like, Coach, I don't know why I did that. Like I wasn't thinking. Or that you're like, you're off the team, or you're suspended, or you got to go sit down. They're like, I don't care. It's because they do care, but they're not thinking in that moment. Sometimes the words are just not there. And a trauma-sensitive coach understands that behavior is just behavior. It does not define a person. And as a coach, it's my job to create a space where kids can heal from the trauma that they've experienced, that they can learn new skills, both physical skills and life skills, so that they can apply those life skills and begin to make healthier decisions as they move forward. This is so pivotal, that trauma is a very individual experience. And though you may be coaching an entire team of people, of young people, right, that trauma that someone is experiencing, even when they're actively experiencing traumatic events, or maybe their brain has been rewired, right? I had to dip into a 10 response because I was in a 10 situation, but now my brain's rewired and I respond to a 2 just like I respond to a 10. That's why somebody bumped me online and I swung on them, and you're like, yo, you didn't need that response, but my brain has been rewired to respond this way at all times. It's my job to really work with that young person to create new behaviors, new actions, rewire that brain, just like we talked about when we were talking about signing with our non-dominant hand. Our work with a young person doesn't just happen because we're there. It happens because we're intentionally building those relationships. We're using physical activity to begin to get the brain to rewire, and we're building those really important relationships with the coach and with the players themselves. And Boy, we could go on a tangent and talk about all kinds of things, but our time is rapidly coming to a close, and we want to do one more thing with you. Life skill and sports skill. It's all skill development. As a coach, that is the power that you have. I seen before we got here, right? I forget exactly who shared. I want to go through the list really, really fast. I want to say it might have been Teresa. I may have that wrong, but somebody was just talking about like the weightiness of a coach, the weightiness of what you have to carry. I think I do have that wrong, but there was a bunch of us kind of talking in that chat. But like, it is weighty because it is so important. You are doing, in my opinion, we are doing as coaches the hardest work in our cities. Yes, first responders and policemen and all of that stuff is super important, but you guys are doing some of the most important work, some of the hardest work out there. And that's why taking care of yourself, putting your mask on first is always important. And understanding the power of behavior, being able to intentionally create opportunities for kids to heal from that will really, really help. And that's where we come in with even future trainings that we can possibly do with you guys to help talk about some very specific techniques. So Thomas is going to wrap us up for today as we do some reflecting.
Awesome. Nate, really quick, what's your breakout room capability over there?
We are just going to do this all together as a group.
Perfect. All right. So one thing that we love to do that we talk about and we try and make a tradition here in all of our trainings at Up to Us Sports is that we want to give folks time to reflect on what we talked about, because we know it was a lot of information, a lot of talking. And we want us to be able to take away at least one thing that we would do differently after getting all the information and sharing all the things that we did today. So we'll open up the space for about the next 3 minutes or so. It may get quiet at first, but we're going to allow it to be quiet for a little bit because folks may be thinking. But just tell us one thing that you would do different after attending this training today.
Well, I can speak. I don't mind to go and say I am coming off of coaching college age for almost 7 or 8 years into youth soccer. So for me, I'm going to take away and be a lot more patient as far as like before I react to how a player is acting, I'm going to think what could be going through their world. Because in college, you know, I have a bit more control over what kind of environment they're in as far as the program goes. But with coaching youth, they show up after who knows what throughout the day to practice. And so I'm going to pause and kind of think, this has helped me think more youth, not that it doesn't apply to college as well, but what different home environments, all sorts. So I'm going to try to be a bit more patient with how I react to players' behaviors. I tend to be a bit more defensive, I think, at times, but I want to be more empathetic and compassionate with them when I'm interacting with them.
Yeah, I love it. I think we can connect a lot with the younger kids, but even in college. So I played baseball in college, and our third baseman, who was this just incredible athlete and very skilled all the way around, had a hard time not cursing when he was in that amygdala response. And it was always the F word. And I literally sat there for 4 years because we were in the same year and watched this, our coach and this player who was 18 to 22 years old work on not cursing and eventually did, right? The whole, I think our whole junior year, the word was fudge. He worked the actual F word out all the way going down to fudge. And then by the end of our senior year, it was like, you saw him just in that moment, take a deep breath and then just walk away from the situation. So we can definitely make these connections and have that patience as well, Leah, with our college athletes. What else? What are some other things we're going to do differently?
Well, I don't get to coach quite as much as I want to, but I do teach. And from time to time, I step in and help coach adult rugby. But I went the opposite direction of Leah. I coached youth prior to coaching adults. So I definitely feel what that transition is like. And one of the things that I'm just going to try to do better overall, whether it's in a coaching environment, a teaching environment, is to listen with intentionality, not just, not just listening to hear, not just listening to understand, but being very intentional with my listening and finding points where I can probe and finding points where I can, potentially provide some support and resources. But, really making it a point to understand where folks are coming from, but to have the opportunity to develop a response that would provide some comfort in that time and then sustainable comfort along the way.
Yeah, even when I went through this, I'm a father of two older teenage boys. Even though I have a baby face, I do have two older kids, and it changed the way I am a dad. Right? Changed sometimes. Sometimes I still go back to my old ways, but it changed the way like I was like understanding what they were going through, especially during COVID, right? And trying to understand that kids' normal ways of coping with trauma have been taken away from them by the time we're like totally out of this. Some kids maybe up to 2 years. And so they haven't even had their normal coping mechanisms, your sport, your coach, you as a coach, their friends, their school, like a lot of that has been ripped away from them. And so they've got extra things happening in their world and they've got no way of coping with it. And it's so critical. And I just also want to say, it's also important as a coach that we don't feel the pressure. We have to do all of this, really building our network to understand that sometimes we got to do a warm handoff to somebody else. We got to understand where our limits are. We are not counselors. We are not caseworkers. We have to understand when kids need a little extra help, a little extra attention, and be able to do that warm handoff to get them what they need. Because I mean, look, the stats out there are crazy. I think they're 75% of girls are quitting sports after middle school age. A large majority of kids are quitting sports after middle school. And we understand the power of a coach, a sports program, and just falling in love with sports and physical activity. And so we want to keep one more kid for one more day.
Yeah, I think recently there's a lot of people on edge because of the, why not, the pandemic, but you could just tell and the kids are starting to be on edge as well. Like even when people pay their fees to my business, I own a gym. So like when they pay their fees, they're just aggravated. They just seem very aggravated and on edge. And because they don't know what is next, from, election, they're mad at whatever side they're on or what's going on with their kids' school systems but you can really tell now that it's getting ready to start to affect the kids, the youth, and then I think that's going to cause like some fatigue in other people as well, just because when we do get back on our regular schedule, it takes a little bit. It takes all of us. It's going to take a lot out of all of us. So be patient with the kids on the edge right now, and parents and adults. They're all on the edge.
Coach, I don't know who you are because it's just a room far away, just voices talking out of a box. So whoever you are, snaps to you. You're 100% right. We say it all the time here, and I know we're over time, so we're going to teach you one last tradition and get us out of the way so we can move on to the next one. The first year or two when we're back in sports, honestly, for good coaches, won't even be about the sport. It's going to be about healing. We're all going to need a place to heal. I've been cooped in this living room for almost a year and a half now. I'm going to need a place to heal myself when we're back in person. And so the first year or two really is just going to be about healing. And I think we're going to have a lot of really well-meaning adults, either like college students or people who are volunteering, who want to help and who are trying to do the right thing, but just don't have the tools necessary. And we're going to see all this trauma-based behavior coming out. And we could do more harm than good. I know that was said earlier today. It's so important that we do no more harm. And these types of trainings and understandings, and even our other trainings where we kind of get more like with the nuts and bolts, like real strategies and real techniques that you can use. That's not really what we were asked to do today, becomes so much more important. So I thank you guys all for being here, and our friend Jillian for allowing us to be here with you. And you guys are just doing some of the most amazing work. And we want to do one last tradition with you that Thomas is going to teach us because he's amazing at it.
All right, so we got this tradition that we call a WABU, and it's to show some love, some support, and appreciation for everything that you've done today and that you'll continue to do well past today. So how this goes is I'll call out a WABU, so I'll say thank you all for joining us. Can we get a WABU? And then when I say waboo, we're gonna clap 3 times, boom, boom, boom. Pause, clap 3 more times, boom, boom, boom. After all the clapping, we've built up that love, that support, that appreciation. You have to literally grab that energy from out in front of your face and send it to your camera so that it reaches everybody else with a nice Ric Flair. Woo! All right. And then you're sending the waboo, but you're also getting the waboo. So if you need to catch it and then sprinkle it or put it in your pocket, save it for later when your sport team doesn't do very well or your mom calls you or something, you can do that. All right. So again, it's waboo, 3 claps, 3 more claps, throw it, woo, and then we'll see y'all later. All right. So thank you for everything from both Nate and myself for all the work that everybody here is doing. Can we get a waboo?
Woo!
There it is. Catch it. Everyone, thank you. We're going to put our contact information in the chat box, I think.
Also, visit us at uptousports.org. You can see our Up to Us Sports at homepage, which is kind of our response to COVID and helping coaches. Up to Us Sports YouTube channel, and we have a training page on our Up to Us Sports page. So if you want to reach out to us about other trainings that we do and more techniques, this was like one small piece of a big thing that we do. So thank you everyone for being with us, and yeah, we're here if you need us.
Hear me okay?
I don't need.
I'm just kidding.
So you do now.
All right. Can y'all hear me okay? Can't see anybody.